I think This is Spacevidcast Live, episode 4.12 for Friday, May 20th. What?
What?
You laughed at me.
Well, because you normally say like 4.12 or 4.12 kind of thing, and you're like 4.12.
Yeah, it sounded cooler that way.
All right.
We are your oh, I screwed that up. I always want to do, here's a little inside secret.
Yes.
I have been trying to change it, like how Craig Ferguson does. He says, I am TV's Craig Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
I've been desperately trying to change my show open in my brain so that we say, we are the Internet's Benjamin and Carrie Ann Higginbotham.
Yes.
And I just messed it up. But we are the Internet's Benjamin and Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we will be your hosts for this evening. Hey, did something happen earlier this week? I think there was something space-related that was going on.
No.
I can't quite put... Oh, you know what? I think it might have been that Endeavour launched for the very, very last time.
Oh, yeah, I was kind of tired during that time. Is that what happened?
That's what happened.
Loud noises.
We were there, and
we were there.
Check it out.
Go for main engine start. 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 0, and liftoff for the final launch of Endeavour, expanding our knowledge while expanding our lives in space.
Houston, Endeavour, all program. Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Houston is now controlling. Endeavour beginning to pull over onto its back. The roll program underway as Endeavour begins a heads-down position on course for a 51.6 degree, 136 by 36 statute mile orbit.
So the thing with that particular launch was the clouds were really, really low.
Yeah.
And as Mike Moses said during the post-launch briefing, he said something along the lines of there are launch abort modes for a bunch of different things and the amount of clouds that there are, but there isn't a launch abort for
like how long you can see it.
Viewing angles, exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it launched, and we didn't get to see it for very long. I mean, it was really only like 20
No.
seconds, and there was a quick snippet in that video, if you're watching, where they kind of cut away for a second, they cut back, and you see it kind of go thunk right into the clouds, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
There's no launch commit criteria for how long you can see the shuttle before it goes out of sight behind the clouds. Thank you, Mike Moses.
This was the interesting thing, and you had to be there to experience this, and ideally be there to experience more than one shuttle launch, because we've seen a few from that very location. It's
Yes.
a 3-mile marker, and usually you can feel it tapping, the sound kind of tapping against your chest.
Yeah.
It's a light tapping, but because the clouds were so low, it actually echoed off the clouds,
Yes.
and it made it really, really loud for a really long time. So much
Yes.
so, my pants were actually flapping. It was weird.
We've talked about Nico Duga, the Japanese newscast that comes in, and they always have a huge Winnebago with them, and et cetera.
And
et
it
cetera.
blew over.
Oh no! But I really, their windows were shaking so much I thought they were going to shatter. It was, and it was so loud, and it was just everything was shaking.
The tent next to us, you could see the sound waves rippling in the tent.
Yes, the talking space tent.
Yes, I have never seen that before.
No.
I mean, it's been loud. It's always been loud, but never that loud.
It sort of felt like it was really loud, and it kind of hit you, and you were like, ah, that's what I remember. And then
And
it
then-
got louder,
and then it
you were
hit you
like,
again.
oh God, yes,
It was kind of
crazy.
weird.
It was crazy. I know. I'm sorry, we're making people jealous, but it was really, really insane.
Wahahaha. So this show we're going to do a little bit differently. Normally we do
Yes.
space news, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's well, there's a space shuttle orbiting us right now. Exactly. But there were a lot of questions that were asked during the launch of Space Shuttle Endeavour, during our live show. And when we posted the video, there are like 45 responses, comments on the video itself, and
half of which are questions.
Exactly. There are a bunch of questions on the YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of questions.
Questions. I suppose that's about right.
Works for me. Coming in through Twitter. I figured, you know what? Why don't we take some time, answer a few questions. We're going to step into Jeppus territory here.
We need a new open for that.
Exactly. Questions! Some of these aren't questions, they're just comments that I thought were really good, too.
Yes.
So
there's
just
that.
really cool comments.
Just so you know.
And actually, the first one isn't a question at all. It's actually a really good comment. And it comes from YouTube, and it's Cosmopolitish, I think that is.
Yes.
And the statement is, this is the last flight for the Endeavour, but not our last endeavor of spaceflight.
There you go.
And I thought that was a really, really good...
That was a nice way of putting it, and you can't do that with every shuttle name, you know.
No, you really can't. What is that? Oh, it's the thing from behind me.
Okay.
And I thought that was a really good statement because we are doing a bunch more stuff in space. And actually, that leads directly into the next statement, which was from Marlene Bomer, also on YouTube, which says, and this... Interestingly enough, this got a lot of thumbs up, and I'm not sure I agree with it. It was, farewell Endeavour, sorry you weren't replaced by another American program. And that's not true. So let's stop here and concentrate on this for a moment, because I think there's a lot of confusion over the Space Shuttle program, and people think that it has to be hardware built by the government in order for it to be an American program.
Right.
But that's not true at all. NASA is moving to a very innovative system through COTS and CCDev, and these are programs that give money to private companies to build their own space vehicles.
Yeah.
SpaceX is building the Falcon 1 and Falcon 9 and Falcon 9 Heavy rockets. Orbital's got the Taurus rocket, so forth and so on. We've got a bunch of innovative companies building these things, and these are American companies using American workers, American designs, well, most of them, and American hardware. So we are not getting rid of an American program. We're getting rid of an American government-made space vehicle and replacing it with a series of American innovations. And I know the rest of the world, I realize over half of our audience is not from America, so they're like, forget the patriotic stuff. But no, it is. It's kind of a national pride thing. This is our space program. We're some of the best in the world at this stuff. And people are missing the space shuttle. But I think they're forgetting that just because NASA's not innovating a new Space Shuttle 2.0 doesn't mean that they're not innovating in space.
Right.
They're not innovating hardware right now. What they're doing is innovating the industry itself. And as far as I know, we're the only country on the planet right now, and chat room, please correct me if I'm wrong, we're the only country on the planet right now that's throwing money into the private sector to try to build a space industry and expand beyond just a space program. So there you go. We'll kind of wait for the chat room to catch up. But we really are trying to really make this into something that is sustainable through more than just one vehicle. It's really quite cool what NASA's doing over the next few years.
And Trebles was giving you trouble. It's not the Falcon 9 Heavy, it's the Falcon Heavy.
Ah, it's the Falcon Heavy. It's an old bad habit. So it's Falcon 1, which has 1 engine.
Yes.
Falcon 9, which has 9 engines. And the Falcon Heavy, which has a lot more engines.
And Bruce is saying,
it's 27 engines on a Falcon Heavy? Is that right, guys?
Like that. Bruce is saying
F-27, exactly. Thanks, Fax.
The same kind of thing happened when Apollo died. There was a gap. I think a lot of people, because you go through space history, and so you jump right from Apollo ending, and then you're like, and then there was the space shuttle. Well, it wasn't like the next day, and it wasn't in the next year that then there was the space shuttle.
No, let's be clear. Humans first stopped going to the moon in 1972. That's the last time a human stepped foot on the moon. We didn't have the space shuttle lift off until 1981.
Right.
In between, there was Skylab, but that was it.
Right.
So there was a pretty large gap there between the Apollo program and the space shuttle program. And frankly, that gap will most likely be larger than the gap we'll have now between the space shuttle program and private space companies who are innovating next generation rocket designs and capsules to put humans back up on the International Space Station as well as cargo. And the best part about this is, rather than having one vehicle, where if that vehicle has a problem, an engineering problem, we have to ground the entire fleet, we'll have our choice of vehicles. So if one vehicle has a problem, let's say the Taurus rocket has a problem, we can keep flying the Falcon rocket. It's a completely different design.
Yeah.
So now we're going to let
nice.
the industry lead us forward. It's truly an innovative way of looking at the industry. So it's not the death of the American space program by any means. Well, it's the death of the American space program and the birth of the American space industry. How about that?
There you go.
There, we'll go with that.
Well, and Jenny makes a very good comment as saying that what people don't realize is that NASA no longer designs the design, or gets to design hardware, sorry, politicians do. And this has been our downfall. So commercial space is probably one of the best ways to get away from that.
And that's a very true statement. Back in the Apollo era, you didn't have politicians saying, hey, yeah, we need you to go to the moon using solid fuels.
Ready
the
go.
politicians said, you need to go to the moon, you have 9 years to do it.
Yeah,
Make
do
it happen.
as fast
and
as you
NASA
can.
went, okay. 9 years. Yeah, have we put anyone in orbit? No. Huh. 9 okay, we'll make that happen. So that, that's what
But they did.
You're right. And now politicians are, playing politics with our space program, and it's the worst possible thing that could happen. So the best possible thing is remove the politics from it and let the private companies be like, no, we're going to do it our way. We're going to do it the right way.
There you
All
go.
right. So the next question that came up was, so now NASA will focus on creating heavy lift spaceships for the moon, Mars, and asteroid landings. It was a question, ended with a question mark.
Right.
And that came from Freedom Liberty 21 on YouTube. And yes and no. Keep in mind, NASA is a lot more than just a human spaceflight program. All of our attention seems to go towards the human spaceflight portion of NASA.
Right.
But NASA does so much more. Their Planetary Sciences Division is launching a ton of stuff this year. In fact, we were invited to look at Juno, which is a ginormous roll of duct tape that is going to, I joke.
Yes. I'm sure Jim's
It's
laughing
not
right now.
It's not actually duct taped together, but it's really quite interesting. Well, let me get into that. It's a huge satellite that is going to Jupiter, and it's going to be looking at Jupiter.
Beautiful.
It's giant. Normally, when you think of satellites, they have it coated in kind of that gold looking
kind
type
of
thing.
flashy.
That flashy gold, right? And you
Yeah.
think, ooh, satellite. That's not what this one looks like.
No.
The gold created a problem with the electricity. And so they had to move to this kind of, it just looks like it's wrapped in duct tape.
It does kind of.
That's what it looks like.
Or like, those silver gray tarps?
Yes.
Those gigantic, that's kind of what that looks like.
Yep.
But,
and we're going to have that.
Still cool anyway.
We've got some amazing interviews and some
Still
great
like Juno.
footage of Juno that we're going to be posting as a space pod shortly. It's going to be a really cool mission. I think that's going to be really neat. So the Planetary Sciences Division, they're doing a bunch of really cool stuff. Now back on the human spaceflight side of things, while we were just talking about privatized space doing their thing, and remember, that's happening, that's moving forward, and that's real. This isn't like they're maybe going to make something someday. Falcon 1 has launched successfully. Falcon 9 has launched successfully. Dragon, the crew capsule that goes on top of the Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy, has launched and returned to Earth successfully and with pinpoint accuracy. So these are real vehicles that are launching today. Falcon Heavy has not launched, but it will launch within 2 years, I think. So this is real stuff. But even outside of that, there is a new program that Congress is working on called the SLS, which I think is the Space Launch System.
I think so.
And that's a replacement to STS, which is what we have right now, the Space Transportation System, which is the Space Shuttle. So SLS is the next program up, and that is designed to be a super heavy lift rocket. This thing is going to be ginormous. I don't believe... Oh, chat room, help me out. I don't remember off the top of my head if it's a Saturn-class rocket, meaning if it had this, it would have to be the Saturn-class rocket, having the same capability of lifting mass to the moon, at least the same mass to the moon.
Which is craziness.
Yes, it's like 150 tons to low Earth orbit.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yes, it's 150 tons. It's
Data check is SLS is sleazes? No.
well,
If anything, it sounds like you're slurring something. It's slesses.
The sluice vehicle. But that's the next vehicle that NASA is most likely going to be designing. If you remember the Constellation program, which has since been essentially canceled, which had an Ares 1, which was a smaller rocket, an Ares 5, which was a larger rocket, Altair, and Orion. The Ares 1 is basically gone, but this might be kind of a rejuvenation of the Ares 5. At this point in time, it's only a paper rocket. There is nothing built. There's nothing ready to go.
It's about as real as our Lego rocket over there.
You know, actually, I'm pretty sure the Lego rocket is more real than the SLS because there's actually something to show. Although I just broke the tail off. Exactly.
You see how sturdy this thing is.
But even though NASA is moving towards a privatized space or commercial space sector for doing their rockets, they are potentially going to be working on this new launching system, which is a good thing because the private space industry, while the Falcon Heavy would be capable of lifting, it'd be capable of putting humans on the moon or even sending humans to Mars.
Right.
It can't bring as much mass up as the Saturn V. So hopefully this new SLS rocket would be big enough to bring just big stuff into space. And when you think about this, if we're going to colonize the moon, if we're going to colonize Mars, we need giant, huge rockets that can actually put entire cities into space, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Well, we need the TARDIS. Duh.
We need the TARDIS.
That's just kind of a given, really.
Don't expect the Falcon Heavy, the SLS, the next generation NASA rocket to come anytime soon. It's going to take years for that to come. But before that, privatized space companies like SpaceX, Orbital, so forth and so on, they will most likely fill in that gap, so American companies will be sending humans into space. Apache Man is asking when the SLS is supposed to be decided upon. You know, I actually don't know. I know that they're working on it, and I don't know that they've actually said this is what's going to happen quite yet. I don't know that they've signed anything into law just yet. And Glider Flyer brings up an interesting point, saying huge rocket equals Sea Dragon. And Spacevidcast's own Vax Headroom did a fantastic overview of what Sea Dragon is at a Space Up. I think it was Space Up DC that he did this at. And that archive is available on our YouTube channel. So if you want to know exactly what Sea Dragon is, search for Sea Dragon in our YouTube channel. And you can get a full like hour-long presentation on all the benefits, pros, and cons. But basically, it's a vehicle that could fit all of the Saturn V engines into just one engine bell that they have. It would be the largest rocket humans have ever launched, and it can launch an insane amount. It puts the SLS to shame. I mean, it's just insanity. It's a paper rocket as well. It's never been built, but it was designed, I believe, in the 60s. And it's just never been built. And they launch it from sea. They basically, it's too big to build a structure for, so they float it out like a barge. They flood it down so it tips upright, and then they launch it from sea. They use the sea as their launching mechanism. All right, let's take a quick break, and then let's come back and answer a few more questions that we had in both our live chat room on YouTube and on Twitter. So stay with us, guys. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, here are some brand new space pics from the ISS.
Thanks, Astro Explorer. These photos are really great. Can you share more?
Of course. You know, Amanda J., these images in many ways connect us all. They connect us by the technology developed to explore space, also keeping us closer and safer on Earth. We now have satellites and sensors to alert us to danger and aid disaster relief efforts. Space technology helps us track and fight fires to protect life.
I heard something about eye surgery.
You're right. Better eyesight to improve life. And medical breakthroughs to extend life.
I get the picture. Space exploration makes things better on Earth. I'm on board.
Think outside the circle.
A key element of the mission is the robot arm. It reaches over the lander and scrapes up soil to put inside the instruments. The scoop comes and digs up the dirt. It's kind of our whole raison d'etre. This is a dig and eat style mission, and the first of its kind, where we're excavating Mars.
40 meters, 27 meters, 20 meters. Standing by for touchdown.
Oh, I guess we're back. Remember, we have no monitor, so we rely on you.
Sorry.
And that's.
I was like, I'm pretty sure we're done.
Yeah, and that's why we're an internet show. All right, so quick behind-the-scenes story before we go back into questions. We have preview monitors sitting underneath the camera, so while the show is going on, we can see what's being directed, and we have an idea as to what's on screen. And we brought that monitor, there's only one of them, actually. I said monitors plural, but it's singular.
Yeah.
There's one of them, and we brought that down to Florida with us and packed it in the luggage and kind of wrapped it.
For the exact same reason, so that when we're on the show.
Yeah, and we connect that to Cisco Yumi, and then the Yumi shows us what's going on so we can see what's happening in real time.
Right.
The problem is it did not survive the travel down to the Kennedy Space Center. And so we get down there, and it's kind of, I pull it out, and it's kind of gashed up a little bit on the screen. And I'm like, oh, that's not good.
If there was actual plasma in that screen, it would be oozing everywhere.
Well, it was an LCD, but regardless.
But that's what I'm saying.
You know, it's only that big. But regardless, so it's gashed on the front of the screen. I'm like, well, that kind of stinks, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Doesn't have to be pretty.
Right,
Just, it's a rough preview.
Right.
We plug it in and turn it on, and it is just like the shattered ooze of pixels coming. It's very artistic and beautiful looking.
It was so terrible.
But completely unusable.
It was pretty much as bad, if not worse, than the Cat P TV.
Yeah.
And those of you who...
We've broken 2 TVs now. Go Spacevidcast. So yeah, that's why, So, we have no monitor sitting in front of us. We did buy a new one because we needed to have something for Kennedy Space Center, but we left it down there so we wouldn't have to ship it back and forth. So now we need to buy a new one for up in the Minneapolis studio. Anyhow, that's why we have absolutely no idea. I will not know what this show looks like until I go back after the fact. Let's continue on with some questions that we had on our YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I think we kind of answered this one before, but the question is from Bitstream Dreamer.
Yes.
The question is, so what's going on now? Will there be another space shuttle, another missions in the near future? Well, there is one more space shuttle launch, STS-135, with Space Shuttle Atlantis, and that is due for July 8th, I think, at this point. No earlier than July 8th.
Yes, net July 8th.
And that date is subject to change and will change, most likely. But that's it for the Space Shuttle. There is no replacement program for the Space Shuttle, meaning there is no Space Shuttle 2.0.
Right.
From NASA, at least. So there isn't anything that they're going to replace it with. There's not some giant new thing. There was a while back. They were actually working on a next-generation Space Shuttle, but politics got in the way again, and some of the requirements for this next-generation vehicle were just not technically feasible, and the program was shut down. So right now, there is, once that last Space Shuttle mission goes, it's done. And that's why in the last Space Pod, I implore you, go down and watch STS-135. And a lot of people were like, yeah, well, I can't make it, and blah, blah, blah. Look, you can make excuses all day long, but there are people, amazing people like Radio Kate on Twitter, who found a way. She doesn't live in the U.S., she lives overseas. She found a way to come to the U.S. For STS-132, right, 133, which, if you remember, scrubbed and was delayed like 3 months. And so she stayed in the U.S. for 3 months, found a way to make it work, and still got to see Space Shuttle Discovery's final flight. You have a choice. You can make excuses, or you can choose to find a way to make it work. And I realize you can always say, well, money's a thing, or I don't live in the U.S., or you never know if it's going to launch. Yeah, and those are all great excuses. And they are. They're valid, good excuses.
Yep.
Or you can set your mind to it and say, you know what, I can make all the excuses in the world, but I'm going to find a way to see the final flight of the space shuttle ever, because there are no space shuttles after this. So find a way to come down.
Uncle BS says, you gotta love those student visas. I don't believe Kate had a student visa.
I don't know how she got over. We're just gonna drop that particular subject.
Anyway.
We did touch on SLS, so there is the launch system, and in addition, there are the privatized companies. For example, the big one right now is SpaceX, trying to make the Dragon capsule, human certified, so that they can do. And actually, they've got some really innovative stuff they're doing with Dragon that I hope makes it into other systems like Orion and whatnot. It may not, but...
And we are still having astronauts go up to the International Space Station. We're just hitching a ride with the Russians.
Correct. So the U.S. will still be sending astronauts up, but we'll be doing so on the Soyuz rocket as opposed to our own rocket, at least for a couple of years, as we flush out our own new designs here in the U.S. through those privatized companies. This next one is a bit long, and it's from Mr. Blue Nun.
Yes.
And this is a very difficult one to answer. But it's a question that comes up a lot, and so I thought I would bring it up on air.
Yes.
And first, says, can I take the chance of saying thank you for such a detailed and high-def video?
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Having said that, I'm at a loss as to why we as humans think this manned flight into space is at all necessary. The cost could run many a small country. If possible, and bear in mind the PR virtue of this, what exactly other than non-stick cooking utensils and high-heat polymers have we, again as the human race, gained? Please do not reply with knowledge. Manned spaceflight is unnecessary. Well, to answer that question, I would have to say knowledge. The next question is, I'm just kidding, just kidding. It's my Craig Ferguson, you like that?
That's terrible. That's terrible.
This is the hard thing about space, in that you don't see what you get out of space immediately.
Right.
In the technology sector, you see a revolution in a CDMA radio. Within a year, it's in a cell phone, and you can hold it in your hand and you can touch it and feel it. The other argument could be made, well, everything that you can do in manned space, you can do with robots.
Right.
So let's rip this apart bit by bit. It's hard to say what is absolutely necessary, and there certainly is knowledge. And actually, I don't think saying knowledge, you can just dismiss knowledge and be like, well, learning stuff is not important.
Right.
You can't do that. So I'm gonna throw that back at you and say, no, knowledge is important, and understanding some of this stuff is important. Understand, on the International Space Station, they're doing cancer research. They're doing a lot of this stuff is very finite control type things, and you're not going to want to do that with a robot. You want a human who can make split-second decisions in real time to do some of these experiments. Additionally,
well, and not just the experiments. Think about the STS-125, the last mission to Hubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Massimino is out there working on this thing, working on it. It is not going. It is not moving.
The door,
yeah,
right?
it is. It's not opening. It's not budging in any way, shape, or form. And he essentially had to break it to a certain extent to get it to go.
There is no robot I know of that would have been able to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. It simply would not have been possible. Then you go, well, what's the point of the Hubble Space Telescope? And and you can make that argument all day long. Well, what's the point of what's the point of a car? You don't have to have a car.
The thing is that there's no correct and definitive answer for this question in particular.
Yep.
But there's many little answers that sort of all add up to the big answer, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. This is a hard one, though. I don't remember who said this. It was someone in Kennedy Space Center. They're probably in the room right now. But it was something along the lines of they were watching a presentation of someone who said, I hate to break it to you guys, but reasons for exploration have traditionally not been knowledge, excitement, advancing the human race. It's always been...
Yeah, those are nice little buzzwords.
Those are buzzwords for the space industry, but traditionally it's been expanding our country, war, money, like trying to find new, and yeah, that's traditionally been what it has been. And frankly, it may come back to that. China's starting to do some pretty aggressive stuff in space. We may partner with them, or we may say, we may get prideful and say, no, this is where we want to own space.
As Ziegler says, exploration and exploitation.
Yes, exactly. It's a really, really it's a really, really difficult question to answer. But in the end, if you don't seek new things, if you're not always pushing the boundaries of what humanity is capable of, then you'll never advance past the point you're at right now. And certainly we could send robots up to do some of this stuff, but let's take Spirit and Opportunity. Well, let's just take Spirit for a moment. Spirit has been stuck in the sand of Mars for a while. And it hasn't explored very far. It would just take one human on Mars to walk up to Spirit, pull it out, drop it back down, and we'd be able to continue our exploration. Also keep in mind the amount of... Spirit was a 90-day mission, right? And it has been going for years. It is an amazing non-human mission. I mean, those guys get a lot of kudos.
Spirit in any way,
I don't want to
form.
belittle this program at all, but a single human in 1 week could cover just as much ground as what Spirit did in years.
Yeah.
So there's all of that to be had as well. There's a lot of stuff that we as humans can gain from space, but we have to be willing to look 10 and 20 years in the future, not just one. And frankly, it's not in our culture. It's not in our DNA to do that. We look for our immediate survival first. And that's not necessarily what space offers.
And my argument, as terrible, I suppose, as it sounds, is we have no human redundancy in the universe.
That's correct.
We don't. So while Ben and I may choose to not have children, there are plenty of people out there that want to, try and create a better world for their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc., etc. And if we as humans don't figure out how to live on another rock, that's just not gonna happen.
A lot of people say it doesn't affect us now, but it does. The other thing to keep in mind, and I can't stress this enough, if you don't push yourself forward, you never move forward. And imagine if humanity never pushed past the Industrial Revolution. Imagine if no one ever pushed into the computer revolution. Imagine if we never pushed into the internet revolution. I mean, consider where we would be. Indoor plumbing would probably still be a luxury to most people. I'm serious.
Scary.
I'm absolutely serious.
So scary.
Fringe stuff like this, the putting humans into space, this is what pushes humanity forward. It's one of the things. There are many other things that do it as well, and all of them are equally deserving, but it's one of those things that does that. And that's why we do this, because we as humanity constantly want to push forward and do better things. All right.
Max Q, yes, probably. And my understanding is that the end of the world is actually on Saturday.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Moving on, I have no idea how to pronounce that.
Ooh, I don't either.
It's the user is OISIAA, Oisia? On YouTube asks, have the engines always, this is in reference to STS-134, have the engines always been that dark black color? Well, I thought the best way to answer this would be to show you guys STS-1, which is the very, very, very first space shuttle mission from about T-5 or so through a few seconds into liftoff. You guys want to see the very, 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 very first shuttle launch?
And pay close attention to the engines.
You pay close attention to the engines. They're only in the shot for about 3 seconds or so, so take a peek at those engines. So here you guys go. STS-1, the very, very, very first shuttle launch ever.
We've gone for main engine start. We have main engine start. Liftoff of America's first space shuttle. And the shuttle has cleared the tower.
While the engines were black, so to answer the question directly, yep.
Yes.
Engines have always been that exact color. So that's the answer to that question. But the external tank, the orange external tank has not. For the first couple of missions, STS-1, STS-2, they actually painted the external tank to try to keep that foam. They were afraid of foam liberation. Turns out that fear was a good fear. That has been a problem with the space shuttle. But they decided to stop painting the tank, and they saved several hundred pounds of weight that they could then put into cargo and other things.
Pounds.
Several hundred pounds.
That's craziness.
Yeah, just in paint.
Craziness.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway.
They also had issues where when they were talking about ascent, when they were launching, they were talking about how the paint itself was actually flaking off and hitting the windshield.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's not good.
Scary.
So, yeah,
there aren't any windshield wipers on those things, you know.
Yeah, but they're saying
so the love bugs, that's an issue too.
Yeah, oh man. Talk about that in After Dark. The next question is, what was the top speed in miles per hour and top Mach of the Endeavour? And tricky question. So the top speed is going to be 17,500 miles per hour. However, your Mach speed does change. So Mach is the speed of sound. The speed of sound changes based on the atmospheric, how it interacts with the atmosphere. And the higher you go up, the less you interact, so the speed of sound changes. However, having said that, approximately Mach 25. That's the approximate Mach speed, maximum Mach speed of the space shuttle.
Interesting.
The next question is, when does Endeavour land? And that's, actually, could you call that up? Because I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yes, I can.
There are most likely more than one landing opportunity, so we won't know for sure when Endeavour lands until Endeavour lands. Much like we don't know for sure when Endeavour will launch until we hit T+1. That's just the way it is. But it's usually around a 2-week mission, around 14 days. And the current landing date is no earlier than...
It's a 16-day mission because they had to add...
I said around 14.
Yeah, because they had to add those days on. I'm not seeing it.
Oh, June 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm like, I know somebody in the room has probably already got it.
There you go. I normally have the answer. It doesn't matter. So around June 1st or so.
Or so.
But stay tuned to our Twitter channel because that could change based on weather. They can't. The space shuttle is a glider. It doesn't have power when it lands, so they basically use that 17,500 miles per hour and just slow to zero. And if they miss, or if that's it. So they get one chance to land, which means they're not going to land through rough weather. So if they've got really bad weather covering all their available landing sites, they'll wait another day. The last question we've got for today, although there were a ton of questions, but this is the last one we're going to ask. And this is a really good one, which is we're retiring the space shuttles and we're sending them to museums, but why can't we just keep a space shuttle docked to the International Space Station and use it as extra storage? And this is actually a very common question that we have gotten from multiple sources. And the reason is the space shuttle was not designed to be in space for more than around 14 days.
Right.
You can extend that. You can do in an emergency, you can extend that. I believe the extension is up to 30 days, but that's about it. There are many factors that go into keeping the space shuttle in space, and a lot of them have to do with power, heat, and cooling. Okay. Because you're essentially going from radically hot temperatures to extremely cold temperatures. You need to make sure that the thermal systems of the space shuttle can deal with all of that.
Right.
Well, and that's why, by the way, when they get into space, the very first thing they do is open the cargo bay doors, and that's to ensure that the space shuttle doesn't overheat, because the electronics in the space shuttle begin to heat up. So they open the cargo bay doors and use that as a... Cool, huh?
Right.
All right, so 3 big reasons. Now, there are a lot more reasons than this, but I'm going to give you 3. One is something called the beta cutoff angle. When you're docked to the International Space Station, you can't control the shuttle's position. You're docked to the space station.
Right.
So if the space station tips, and not if, but when it tips into a certain angle, the sun is going to be hitting it in such a place where it's not designed to be heating, or the sun won't be hitting it in certain places that aren't designed to be cold.
Okay.
Right? So the thermal protection of the space shuttle is going to get all out of whack, and that's why they can only launch the space shuttle at certain times. You'll hear them say there's not a window, during these 2 weeks because of a beta angle cutoff. That's what that is. It's when it's docked to the International Space Station, the shuttle is quite literally facing the wrong direction and will overheat or underheat in certain aspects of it.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, because
go on.
I'm trying to do my best to explain it.
No, that's good.
I was on Wikipedia last night. Oh, anyhow. The second reason is, big reason, is going to be power. A lot of people propose sending Atlantis up. That's the worst of the 3 orbiters because it doesn't have the shuttle to station power system.
Right.
But let's just say we didn't use Atlantis and we used something like Endeavour.
Right.
By the way, Atlantis could not be powered up for more than a couple weeks on the station. There is no ability to transfer power from the shuttle to the station. So once the fuel cells die, that's it. The shuttle is dead. And you wouldn't be able to use it for anything. So your only 2 options are Endeavour and Discovery. But even then, it's designed to kind of keep the power going back and forth. It would be a giant drain on the International Space Station's power systems to keep the shuttle powered up because it's designed to run as its own independent vehicle. So it's a complete and total waste of power to keep this thing docked to the International Space Station.
Right.
People want to use it as extra space, but the actual pressurized space on the shuttle is very, very tiny. So you don't actually gain that much, but it requires a fantastic amount of power. The third reason, and I don't remember the third reason.
So, okay, so we can't just use it as an extra room.
No, well, we can for about we could for about 30 days.
Well, I mean, I guess the insinuation here is that we wouldn't need to power it at all. We just leave it on there like an extra room.
You do. No, you need to.
Why?
Well, you need to keep the electronics going. You need to keep the atmosphere going. You need to keep, scrubbing stuff.
If we're just letting it, it's just an extra room.
Then what's the point? Why not just tack on an extra room? Oh, that brings up my third point. The space shuttle is very, very large and heavy. And while people think...
You're welcome.
Thank you. Space shuttle is very, very large and heavy. Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, and it's not designed to be an extra room, right? When you look at the nodes that have been added to the space station, they're very lightweight. And it will create additional drag on the International Space Station. While the ISS is technically over the boundary of space, it is also technically still within our atmosphere. And there is drag, very, very light amounts of drag that occur on the ISS. There will be additional drag, quite a bit of additional drag that happens with the space shuttle sitting on there. It won't have enough fuel to keep boosting the International Space Station up.
Right.
So we're going to have to use the Soyuz capsules to do that quite, a lot more. So it will actually inhibit the space station and hurt it more than it would help by having all of that extra weight tacked onto the space station. Well, it's not actually. The weight it's not weight. What it is surface area pressing against. That's really what it is. It's causing drag against the finite molecules of the atmosphere. Really, that's the problem.
Okay.
And it would start tugging on the space station, pulling it back down to Earth. And what are you gaining by adding that space shuttle? Not a whole lot. So you've got power problems, you've got drag problems, and you've got heat problems. This space shuttle was never designed to be in space for more than a couple of weeks. In an absolute emergency, it can maybe last 30 days. But that's it.
Well, and she also wasn't designed to be in space, for that long, and she wasn't designed to be working for this long.
Correct.
So now you have an old broad who wasn't designed for this kind of stuff, and you're pushing her. She's already been pushed to her limits, and now you're going to push her button one more time.
So those were the three huge technical reasons that basically make it all but impossible to do.
Right.
There are quite a few more reasons that I just came up off the top of my head in the car that was like, well, and then you'd have to overcome all of these other things. But those top three reasons, you'd have to do major reconstruction of the space shuttle in order to get over those three things. And what's the point? It doesn't make any sense. Additionally, all three space shuttles have been guaranteed homes in museums. And so, let's let people, Space Shuttle Atlantis is going to Kennedy Space Center, Space Shuttle Discovery is going to the Smithsonian, Space Shuttle Endeavour is going to LA, and Space Shuttle Enterprise is going to New York. And so this will give the largest number of people the ability to use it. And you would not be able to use it after 30 days as a rescue system as well. It simply wouldn't be able to do it, and you'd have to do it.
That's why we have extra Soyuz, dude.
Yep, we've got Soyuz, we've got all of that on board. There's just really no good reason to keep it attached to the International Space Station. And actually, quite the opposite. If you keep it attached to the International Space Station for more than a couple of weeks, it really hurts the International Space Station. It doesn't help it. So there you go. All right, for those of you watching live, or for those of you that are Epic subscribers, stay with us. After Dark is up next. Wanted to thank everyone for watching. We're going to continue our live coverage of Space Shuttle Endeavour, the final flight of Endeavour, all the way down through Real Stop in high definition on our channel. I hope you guys liked our live coverage. It was a ton of fun to bring it to you.
Ooh, is Endeavour supposed to land in LA?
With the movie? What was the movie?
No. I just mean that Endeavour's already going to LA.
No.
So they're going to bring her back to KSC and then fly her back to LA?
Yeah, they need to process the orbiter. Okay. They have to get there are toxic materials on Endeavour, like hydrazine. They need to. They're not gonna deliver it to a museum with these very, very deadly chemicals still on board.
Are they going to clean her?
And
yes, it was the core.
My understanding is that so Kennedy Space Center has asked for Atlantis not cleaned. They want Atlantis with all the scuffs and burns and everything else. And I love
dirty.
it. She is. We just got to see her during rollover, and I looked up and I'm like, wow.
She's really dirty. Like dirtier than Endeavour.
Yeah. So anyhow, all the shuttles will try to land back at Kennedy Space Center. Even if they're not able to land at Kennedy Space Center and have to use an alternate site, they will still send her back to Kennedy Space Center to get rid of all the extremely deadly chemicals that exist on a space shuttle. They won't.
Yes, QG, that's what I said.
So. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and join us next week as we talk more space geekery. It's every Friday at 2 a.m. Coordinated Universal Time for those of you in the U.S. Those Thursday nights at, 7 Pacific, 8 Mountain, 9 Central, and 10 Eastern.
Good job.
Thank you.
Daylight time, not
Daylight time. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.